So this is my first lift session ever, so I'm really excited to be here, and I was a little bit nervous that nobody was going to show up, so it's always exciting when you have an audience. But before I kind of dive into this content, I'll give you a little bit of background about me. So I am a Sooner through and through. I graduated with my bachelor's at OU in broadcasting and electronic media, and then I went in and straight got my master's in video producing and media management. And I knew I wanted to do kind of the business side of video production, and which is why I went ahead and got my master's. And so through my graduate program, I fell in love with zombies. Of all things, it was the weirdest passion and obsession. But I got to really focus on kind of the impact of horror and fear and the impact they have on a desensitized audience. And so it was just a really strange, I was the weird kid in class saying, yeah, I'm studying zombies, and people looked at me very weird. But I got to make, like she said, I got to make a educational documentary, a mini doc, focusing on the research I had done, and it included 3 executive producers from The Walking Dead. It was a dream come true, total nerd moment. But through that, I also got to work with a lot of associations. And so working with FEMA and working with the National Association of Broadcasters through grad school really helped me in the position I'm in today at NextThought, where we do a lot of work in the association space. And so when I graduated at OU, I said I was never going back to academics. I was done forever. I was sick of it. I had been through it, been there, done that. And then it was only a couple years later I got a call from OU, and they said, hey, we would really like you to teach a producing course. And so I, of course, said yes, and I start in the spring. My first course ever teaching is very different from producing, so we'll see how that goes. So yeah, I came on to NextThought in 2015, and I want to show you guys a quick little video of just the stuff me and my team have produced over the last year. It has been a really growing year at NextThought Studios, and so to give you a little bit of background on what NextThought is we're an online learning solutions company, and so we specialize in our LMS technology and content development, instructional design, and then video production, which is where I live. And so we're only 6 years old, and we have about 60 full-time people on staff. And NextThought Studios really started to support our platform, and we really started only creating educational content that would really support our platform. And throughout the last 5 years that video has really been active, we created over 5,000 educational videos, which has been interesting and it's been fun, and we've kind of paving the ground as we're going. We don't know what's around the corner, and so over the last year we've actually turned into a full service production house to where we're doing anything from local TV commercials all the way to documentaries. So it's been a really big growing year, and that's, I skipped over that. So I'm not used to presenting at the same time, so bear with me. And being on the video side too, I have my script with me at all times, so forgive me if I have to read a little bit while we do that. But so diving into this, the biggest question I want to talk about is why do we want to use video? And there's so many tools at your fingertips, and video can either be, looked at as super overwhelming. It can be expensive. There's lots of other routes you can take that's, easier, safer. But so why video? And so did you know? And these are a couple of statistics I want to throw out there. By 2019, global consumer internet video traffic will account for 80% of all consumer internet traffic. 55% of people watch videos online every single day. Facebook alone generates 8 billion video views on average per day. Almost 50% of internet users look for video related to a product or service before visiting a store. And including video in a landing page can increase conversion by 80%. And then 4 out of 5 consumers believe that demo videos are helpful. And before we really dive into this, I want to let you guys know I'm not a salesman, I'm not a marketer, I don't have a business degree, I have no background in that, but I look at statistics and there's so many you can just pull from right and left, and they really speak for themselves. Video is on the move. It's everywhere. Everywhere you look outside, it's just everywhere. And so I think we are very hungry to be entertained constantly. We're very hungry, we're very visual learners. And so video is really the best way to get your message out there. And so I want to start with the most basic type of video, and that's movies. And we're all familiar with movies, and we all are movie critics. And so I want you to sit down and just think for a second about what is a movie that has impacted you lately, that you can remember, what's fresh on your mind, something you've seen lately, and it could be a commercial, or it could be a music video, or it could be anything that really just had an impact on you, whether it was like funny or sad, or maybe it just had your favorite actors in it or something like that. So think about that for a second, and think about why you liked it. What was it? What was it that drew you in? And more likely than not, it's because it elicited an emotion within you. And that's really the most powerful thing about video, is if it elicited an emotion. And so it really doesn't matter if you were laughing or if you're crying at the end of it. If you felt something, you remember it. And those are the differences between the videos that we typically just kind of skip on over. And so eliciting emotions, because emotions play such a massive part in how we as consumers function. And so good video producers often use a lot of different tools to pull at those like heartstrings. And so we utilize anything from sound design to lighting in films, or just visuals that we portray on screen. But a good video utilizes those skills in order to get your heart beating, to get those chills on your arms and that kind of thing. And so I want to talk about music just shortly. And I'll refer to like scary movies and fear just a little bit, because that's my favorite kind of movie. And I know not everybody likes that, but I want you to think of like a scary movie that you've watched. And think about, those jumpy ones where you kind of like know something's about to pop out at you and you're just waiting for it and you can feel it, and then it happens and you're scared, but you don't know why, because you knew it was going to happen anyway. Next time you watch one of those videos, I want you to just mute your TV. And I want you, anytime it doesn't have to be a jumpy, scary one, it can be something that you just like are a little intense with. Mute your television and think about how that changes. Once you mute that music, the fear like totally goes away. It's crazy. And it's actually that question that really started getting me going and really started my obsession onto why fear. Why do people want to be afraid? Because fear is a negative emotion. It is not, people don't enjoy fear when they're actually scared. So why do they want to seek out scary movies? Why do they really just have that adrenaline rush to get that fear? And the truth of the matter is it's because you feel something regardless, and people just want to feel. And we are desensitized by the media. There's stuff everywhere, like I said. And so you sort through all this stuff, and then when you see something that actually elicits those true feelings, you're drawn to it. Whether or not they're selling something that you completely agree with, that resonated with you. And so the main goal is for you to get your video watched as much as possible. And statistics show that the most shareable videos are the ones that trigger those emotions, whether it's positive or negative. And so I want to show you a video, and I wish when I first started, I cram-packed this with so many videos that this presentation was like an hour long. And so I have a lot of things I wish I could show you instead of just hear me talk. But the commercial I want to show you is something that I saw when I first started school, and it got me going thinking, I want to produce things that make me feel this way, that get a rise out of me. And so the quality is not the best because it's pretty old, but just we'll see. You guys get chills at all? I love that. And I want to say, I know that some content completely lends itself to emotion far more than others. And so this is very easy to pull at your heartstrings, whereas educational content might not be as easy. And so that's kind of what I want to dive into. How do we make that stuff that's not as easy still get this kind of reaction, and maybe not this exact? But it all really starts with your message. And so when our team at NextThought meets with clients for the first time, that's what we have to figure out. There's 4 main questions that we ask to get this conversation, to get our wheels turning, to start deciding what direction do we want to go. And so our first question is, who's your target audience? And this might seem really obvious at first, but I want you to even break it down further. So if your video might look completely different than your company's target audience, depending on what you're trying to sell. If you're making an internal training video, that audience may be completely different than your company. So that's the first question we ask is, who is your audience? And then what is the goal of your video? And so what's the outcome you want from this? Are you trying to sell a product? Are you trying to inform? Are you trying to educate? Are you trying to recruit? Number 3, what are the tent poles? And this is just a fancy way of saying, what are your key points? Though these key points don't necessarily make the script directly, this is really important because a lot of times, especially if you're hiring an external agency or production company to make your video, you're the content experts and they're not. And if those aren't laid out directly, these are the main things that we need to somehow find a way to input into this video, that will get lost in translation really fast, and your video will end up missing a lot of the most crucial elements. And then number 4, what are your influences? And so this is as simple as saying, what inspires you? What gets you going? Obviously, I like zombies, so that's my natural answer to everything. So they've had to tell me, Janelle, we can't make a horror film for every single thing. But what inspires you guys? What gets you going? Look at your competition. What are they doing? Not necessarily saying you have to do exactly that, and we'll kind of get into that in a second. But but find out what inspires you. And that can be from looking at movies and looking at other commercials, or looking at, what kind of music do you like? And those are just, these 4 questions really start, once you answer them, your message is kind of there already. And it takes some cleaning up and some shaping to do, but you'll see that it starts to take form. And so when you're considering the next step, you've kind of found your message, you understand, emotion's got to be in there somewhere. You have to figure out what category is my video going to fall in. And this can start to get overwhelming extremely quickly because there's so many, and the list just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And your video could literally be a branding, informational, entertainment, instructional, recruitment, interactive, event capture, testimonials, documentaries. I won't read the whole list, but this list goes on and on and on. It could be anything. And the list continues to get bigger as we expand in this video industry and pave new ways. And so in an effort to really reduce this down to some tangible categories, we at NextThought sat down and said, what is the common theme of the messages that our clients are giving us? And so we were able to categorize this into 3 main categories. And they are educational, promotional, and entertainment. And so before I really dive into this, I want you to look at the entertainment category. And though we are in the video business, it's not Hollywood. And so we don't have too many clients that come to us and just say, hey, I've got this huge budget for pure entertainment. Let's make a movie. That doesn't happen. And I'm guessing it doesn't happen for you. If it does, come talk to me, because I want to be a part of that some way. But most of the time, we don't even have budgets for that. And so I'm going to focus on educational and promotional today. And in some of the marketing for this session, we did talk about informational and instructional. And those are really the 2 different categories of education that we're going to break down. And those are the ones we see the most of. And they are very different, but they have the same characteristics. And so we threw them into education. And so we'll dive into education a little bit. I want you to, whenever you're driving down the road and you pull into your destination and put your car in park, and then you sit back and realize how the heck did I get here? I shouldn't be driving. My mind went blank. This happens to me so way far more times than not. And sometimes I'll drive to church when I'm supposed to be going to work or something like that. My body goes into autopilot and my mind's just wandering. And then reading. When I read really dense content, especially if it's kind of above my level, my mind goes and I start thinking and I start, imagining, and then I realize, oh no, I didn't get any of that. And so I think we've all had those moments, we've all done that. And truth of the matter, and hopefully you're not doing that now, but you get it. So the thing is educational videos can have that effect so easily. I'm telling you, there is just, I've seen so many videos that I've just kind of zoned out. And especially videos when you don't have people around you making sure you don't have to drive so you have no responsibilities, then you really do start to exaggerate into that. And so the reality is making good educational videos is really equal parts arts and science. And it's finding the balance between the 2. And in the video world, we like to call this edutainment. And this is really education meets entertainment. We want the viewer to be learning without realizing that they are. And so Benjamin Franklin once said, tell me and I forget, teach me and I may remember, involve me and I learn. And so the key to successful educational video is involvement. Now that seems so weird because it's a one-sided, medium. And so these are the 3 ways I think you can really bring that involvement category to your educational videos. And so 1, you want to make your topic relatable. And in general, viewers are more likely to finish a video and remember its contents if they can make a personal connection to the topic. And if you start to overwhelm them with lots of uninspiring or impersonal details, they tend to have that reaction of kind of checking out. They don't even hear the message you're trying to say. And so there's several ways to do this, and that can be as easy as asking open-ended questions in your educational videos. And we call this dialogue, and we have a learning design department that really kind of opened this up and said, okay, this is a dialogue feature where you're getting people to communicate backwards, even if they're not talking directly to you. They're answering those questions in their heads, and they're reflecting on things. And then there's another part of that, which is also feedback. And that is where, where's your educational videos being hosted? Are they on an LMS? Is there a place for a discussion to where they can answer the questions? Or do you have somebody on staff? There's lots of different ways to have that feedback that doesn't necessarily have to go directly into the video. But start thinking about how can I, have this relatable topic, even in something that could be very dense. Number 2, have passion and energy. This is so important. It is so important. This is also why there are actors that exist in the world, because I've watched so many videos that you don't have a very energetic speaker, and again, you have that same reaction. You tend to zone out. And so having passion and carrying that enthusiasm is going to keep your audience engaged, even if what you're talking about may not be the most exciting. So you want to make your videos as engaging and lively as possible. And then number 3 is cram pack that video with visuals. And so gone are the days are those back of the room type lecture videos, or the talking head videos, what we call, which is where you just shoot somebody straight on talking at the camera. Now this is super awkward because there's a camera back here filming me. And I do want to say it has a place and it makes sense in certain areas, and talks and conversations. I love watching TED Talks, and TED Talks have that same, back of the room video camera, and there's a place for that. But especially if in an educational video we're trying to get your audience to retain and be able to reapply a message, it's probably not the best. And so what you really want to do is utilize as much visuals as possible, and that can be text on screen or anything. And if you're not utilizing visuals, then why are you making a video? Why not do a podcast? Why not do a reading? Visuals are made for video. And so I have an example of a video that I want to show you that I think it applies all 3 of these to show you the perfect example of an educational video.
Imagine we have 4 travelers. Let's call them Mr. A, B, C, and D. These 4 gentlemen have to cross a bridge over a deep ravine. It's a very dark night, and the travelers have but a single source of light, an old-fashioned oil lamp. The light is essential for successfully crossing the ravine because the bridge is very old and has plenty of holes and loose boards. What's worse is its construction is really quite weak, and it's in a dilapidated condition. It can only, at best, support 2 of the men at any time. The question is, how should the men arrange themselves to cross the bridge? The oil lamp has a limited supply of fuel, and time is running out. Now, each traveler needs a different amount of time to cross the bridge. Mr. A is young and healthy and needs but a minute to quickly traverse the bridge. Mr. D, on the other hand, is an old man who recently had a hip replacement and will need 10 minutes to get across the bridge. Mr. B and Mr. C need 2 minutes and 5 minutes respectively. And since each traveler needs the light to cross, whenever a pair of travelers go together, it's the slower man who determines the total time required to make the crossing. What is the quickest time possible for all 4 travelers to make it across? Now, before you start thinking of sneaky little solutions, let me just say that no, you cannot throw the oil lamp from one side of the ravine to the other. And no, you cannot leave the oil lamp halfway along the bridge and expect it to cast enough light so that they can all make it across. Nor, like my daughter suggested, is it okay to just run off and leave the old guy to his fate alone in the dark. So how should all 4 travelers successfully cross the bridge in the minimum total time? If we assume that there's only 18 minutes of fuel supply left in the lamp, can they all make it? I'm going to let you think about this one and post your answers in the discussion forum online.
I realized after I showed this example, I don't have the answer to that, so it's really frustrating, but I'm happy to share this with anybody that wants to think about it further. So this really kind of, he emphasizes humor. He makes it funny. If you were to read that, word problem, it would be a lot less inspiring than this. And he adds humor, he adds relatability, he asks these questions to where he's not just lecturing, he's talking to you, and you found it, entertaining. And so that's kind of the goal. But no, I know not everybody has a budget for full animation, because that's the other big deal, right? So not everybody has Pixar budgets that can make these cool full animations. And I firmly believe that animations is one of the most powerful resources to demonstrate really complex problems and make it understandable. And so think about animation. If you don't have the budget for it, there's lots of other resources, whether it's just photos or just icons, not having them move as much. But there's text on screen, that's another thing. There's lots of ways you can cram pack visuals that aren't necessarily full-on animations. So I'm going to jump ahead to promotional videos, and these are my favorites because there are so many to choose from. There's so many, there's no one single way. You know, you can do it, the sky's the limit. They come in all different shapes and sizes, and they're just so much fun. But I want to say that there is a heap of sales clutter on the internet, and every bit of it is distracting and repelling your customers. And so how do you make sure that you don't fall into that category with your video? And so we have a couple of answers for that. And so I think centering your message around the story and not the sale. People forget this a lot. And storytelling is one of the best ways to pull that emotion into your piece. I'm not big into cars, but I was watching this commercial the other day, and it had this couple that met, and they got married, and they went on their honeymoon, and then it showed them bringing a baby into the world and taking their home, and it like followed them throughout their life. And I related to it because I recently got married and just kind of fell into this same category, and I was like, oh, this story is so impactful. And then at the end, it like flashed BMW and like faded out, and I was like, what? That was a car commercial? I had no idea. And so I was sold on it immediately. It caught my attention. It grabbed I loved it. And so remember, the storytelling doesn't always have to be the sale. And then number 2, hook your audience within the first 10 seconds. I'm gonna talk about length in just a second, and that'll be kind of a huge category, but 1/5 of your viewers will click away from your video within the first 10 seconds if they are not engaged. And this is so important. And so we want to say hook your audience right at the beginning. That's where you can ask those questions. You know, you want to tease them, get them inspired, answer that question of, why should I continue watching this piece? And so number 3, think outside of the box. You do not have to do what everybody else is doing. And you definitely don't have to do what everybody in your industry is doing. Don't let that constrain you. Think creative, think wild. Get a bunch of people in a room and toss around ideas. That's how we honestly do it. We just get as many different, everybody thinks differently. We throw a bunch of people in a room that are very different, and then we write all this, do a brain dump on the board, and start getting creative ideas flowing. It's so crucial that you're not afraid of like humor or grit or taking a new approach that you wouldn't think about before. It scares a lot of people just because it's like uncharted territory, especially if your industry is not known for that. But I encourage you, think outside of the box. And really, the worst thing you can do is assume that your informative brochure or PowerPoint makes a good script. So write a script, take the time. I've had a lot of people that they've handed me content and said, this is my script, and they just copied and pasted it directly out of their PowerPoint or their brochure, and when you read it out loud, it sounds extremely stiff and not how you would talk naturally. And so spend the time, write a script, go for a complete different approach. And then number 4, don't forget your call to action. And your call to action is really the whole point of the video in the first place, even if you're not directly trying to sell something. And you want to ask yourself, what do I want my viewers to do after they watch the video? If there's no call to action, they're just going to continue on their day and it's not even going to resonate within their mind. And so those are the big 4 things that you can do to really make your promotional videos stand out. The other day, I literally had a client tell me, and I'm going to read this because it's a lot. I had a client tell me that they wanted to promote their company by using an educational video. They wanted it to be comprised of 5 testimonials that would pull at people's heartstrings, and they wanted to fill the video with statistics and info and data about why people needed their company, and then explain the full process of what happens when they join their company, all while making the ending so motivating and powerful that viewers just had to be involved. And that all had to be said within 1 minute. I'm telling you guys, do not cram too much into one video. And that's one of my most important notes out of all. I get that, again, it goes back to budget. Budget's everything. And your budget may only have room for one video. And so you want to get the best bang for your buck, and you want to throw as much stuff in it as possible. And it maybe has to fulfill multiple, it needs to go out in this email, and it needs to go on the website, and it needs to fall under the About Us category. And so there's lots of places to do that, especially since video can be expensive. But the worst thing you can do is overload it with too much content, because you're going to send your viewer on an emotional roller coaster with mixed messages, and overall it's going to impact the quality of your video. And nobody wants to watch an infomercial. Nobody does, I promise you. And so really, I talked about kind of the science behind effective learning videos and effective promotional videos, but behind any video, the science is length. Length is so powerful, and we have such short attention spans, and it's getting harder and harder to keep people engaged. And the truth is, your attention span has a really direct impact on content and video marketing. And so there's been a lot of studies out there, and I've done a lot of research on what's the correlation between video length and attention. And we're actually at NextThought in the process of pulling our own educational videos and doing some studies on our own data from our 5,000 educational videos. But we pulled a study from Wistia, which is an internet video hosting and analytics company, and they revealed the following points in an online article. And truth of the matter is, the length. Your audience will start to die down the longer your video is. That's the whole summary of it. But I'm going to dive into it part by part so you can see how that reflects. So they found that videos up to 2 minutes get lots and lots of engagement. And so this shocked me, because I was so certain that 30 seconds was way more powerful than 2 minutes. And this doesn't include that 10-second hook mark that I was talking about earlier, but you can see at the top, between 30 seconds and 2 minutes, the engagement is very steady. And so short and sweet is really the safe strategy, and this is where you want your promotional material to really land. And so the other thing is, you don't want to cram when you're trying to think, okay, well, I need to cut material down. And we've talked about storytelling and that stuff. Remember that your website can do the heavy lifting, and your promotional video doesn't have to have every single statistic and information in it. You want to engage them so that they can then go do the research after. And so that 2-minute mark is really the sweet spot. And so we'll see after 2 minutes, there's a significant, huge drop between the 2 to 3 mark. And that's what we call the exponential decay, and it just starts to kick in. And so I put on here, if you have a 10-minute video, that's not to say you have to cut it down to 2 minutes. But if you have a 3-minute video, it's best to try to find ways to cut it down to that 2 minute, because every second is going to start counting after 2 minutes. And so the good things to think about here is, if you're new to video, do short. Experiment with short. That's the safe strategy, safe way to start. See how it resonates with your audience before you invest in longer content. And the other big thing is, shorter videos are often cheaper. So that's the biggest plus with that. So when we get to longer term videos, 6 to 12 minutes is really your sweet spot, number 2. And you can see that engagement really kind of levels out again here. And this is where you're going to want to focus your educational material. And so if, say, you have 7 minutes worth of content, rather than 6. It's not going to matter a whole lot. That's where you kind of have a safe area. And then fourth, you're going to really want to proceed with caution after 12 minutes, because every bit after that 12 is just going to start to level off. You're going to lose people. Long form content after 12 minutes is really reserved for long form narrative driven stuff, which is your entertainment, your movies, your documentaries, that kind of stuff, or really in-depth tutorials. And those are where your audience expects it to be long, and they're kind of in there for a specific reason, so they're not going to lose engagement. So proceed with caution for that. And so I get educational content is really difficult, because a lot of times you have so much that you have to show. And a video's got to be as long as it's got to be. You can't just cut important details off. And so what we always suggest is, why not have 4 smaller videos that can be part 1, part 2, part 3, that kind of digestible chunks, rather than one really heavy video. And so those are really the main points I have. And so I know that's a lot of little granular details to shove into a short amount of time, and I'd love to go on and on, because I'm really passionate about this topic. But if you remember, I have 5 main takeaways after all of that. If you forget what I said, no matter what, these 5 things are the things to really remember. And so one is that every video, no matter its content, needs to have some kind of emotional pull. So you want to use elements like your storytelling or your sound design, your music and stuff. Get those emotions flowing. Number 2, make sure your video has a clear and concise message. And to determine your message, ask yourself, who's your target audience? What's your goal? What are your tent poles? And what influences you? And then 3, a video without visuals isn't a video. So utilize animations, photos, and text to emphasize your main points and stay away from that talking head video as much as possible. Number 4, don't forget your call to action. Ask yourself, what should the viewer do after they're done watching the video? And then number 5, length really impacts engagement. So short and sweet is the way to go. Under 2 minutes is ideal for promotional videos, and 6 to 12 works great for educational content. So that's all I have, and thank you guys for sticking with me. I know there's a lot. I wish I could have shown more videos through that, but this was wonderful, and you guys have been great, so I appreciate it so much. We have questions. Perfect. Questions or anything? Yeah. Oh no.
No, it's good. Let's go back to page 14 that you had.
I
Because
sure
one of the last
can.
things you said was when you have such length issues, balancing content length, when you give us your example on 14, your client, what they were looking at, it struck me as you were saying that is difficult. How are you going to manage that? Because I would think that's difficult to do all of that. But if you start with like stats, info, data, that's the education component, that leads to a testimonial. That's one story. Another one is then to explain and motivate with the call to action. How are you going to manage? Is that a perfect example of how you will break up into several different videos?
So ideally we would, in this case, the client, this is a true story, I didn't just throw this in there for fun, but he only had room for 1, and that's the hardest part. I only have a 1-minute video. The budget's only for 1 minute. But you'd be surprised how many people come to you with this kind of request because they're not familiar. They say, I only have a budget for 1, and I need to get every single bit in there, and it just the connections don't make sense. So what we did is actually, we use our creative team, and we break it down, and we start asking the questions to say, okay, what's the most important thing? What do they have to do after this? What's the outcome? And according to that, if the outcome is they want to learn more or they want to give you a call, we focus on, okay, well, we can pull, like you said, we can pull a lot of those stuff out of 1 testimonial. We don't have to do 5. We can do 1, and let's focus on the story. Instead of saying, well, the company did this, this, and this, we said, tell us and we actually took it a different route, and we said, tell us your personal story of your life. And we based the entire piece on the life story, and then at the very end, it's like, well, this is why this company, this is how I got from point A to point B. So we just kind of narrowed it down, and that's really what it is. It's searching through the weeds and saying, okay, what are the most main points that we need to get across? And again, what's that call to action? What's the action you want out of it? And then oftentimes too, clients don't know what they're looking for, and so we have to come in and shape it ourselves too. But does that answer that question? Okay, perfect. Anything else?
So some companies now are using a series of videos. HP is using Wolf. I don't know if you've seen that series,
Haven't.
but they look it up.
I will.
But it's educational, but it's educational to the point of selling what they do by telling you what the threat is. Have you seen any response in terms of kind of series of videos that are still short, but each one kind of hooks you to the...
No, and that's a huge deal with like campaigning and stuff, and people they pick, they'll do like many videos in the same type and make it kind of a series. And it's fun too because then you're like, oh, I want to see what the next one is because it relates to that last one. And so it inspires engagement because you're familiar with it, and so you're already, that 10-second hook was made kind of at the first video, and so your interest is then made. Are you asking about just the sequentialness of those campaigns, or?
That's something that people are doing now. I've only seen that recently, and I thought it was brilliant, and I didn't know if that's kind of a...
No, I've heard it a little bit. Again, it's not it's not huge, again, because of budgets. Like, people don't have humongous budgets, especially in like local, if we're doing like lots of local marketing and stuff. But it is a great tool, and I love, we've done a lot of series videos, so people come and say, okay, I do have this budget, and they'll say, I want a 5-minute video, and we say, let's do 5 1-minute videos, because it's going to be more powerful, and you're going to be able to take different messages from each. And so I'm all for those series. I think they're awesome. And I like the kind of like feeder tactic too, so whatever.
I wonder why.
Yes.
I think my question would be just, have you seen any trends within emails and videos, if that's a higher engagement rate, or just kind of what the trends are with the videos inside emails?
That's so interesting, and I haven't, because I make the videos. But I know like Alyssa and Max, they work with me, and they're awesome, and they're happy to answer any kind of like sales questions at the end, and that was my biggest fear, that I was gonna not be able to answer. No, you're fine. No, and again, I know for those email videos, like short too, those are where you want your really short videos as well, but sorry. Anybody else? Cool. Perfect. Thank you so much.